what we're going to cover today is probably the biggest missing piece for more coaches than just about anything else you can imagine. And I think you'll see why, because it's for good reason. And then besides that, also, this is really the key to transform your client besides just understanding them. There are coaches out there that have a pretty deep understanding of people and appreciate where their clients are at and what's going on for them. There are coaches that have great advice and some pretty deep wisdom to share and offer. But there's not very many coaches that can actually do this or will do it, even if they have a capability to do it. We've covered a ton around what makes people tick. We've covered how to, figure people out. We've covered even how to kind of bridge into the point where you're trying to actually produce some motivation for your clients, or you're actually bridging to this point. And we've already, to some extent, talked about the second step in those 5 master steps, actually getting what we call leverage after you've diagnosed, after you understand your client fairly well. And then we move into this kind of leverage point. And leverage is simply finding a place to stand in a lever big enough and long enough and strong enough such that what seems like a giant boulder that's impossible to move actually moves as a result of the coaching that you actually offer your client. But to help to actually get into the piece of leverage that is really a missing piece for most coaches, we're going to cover the pain part today. So as it says here, pain motivation techniques. Now, I got the smile on my face because I know this is really the key to transformation for most of your clients. And I also know how most coaches feel about this. They feel like this is like kryptonite for them. It's like the Antichrist. It's like, actually, I can't ever put my client through pain. I'm there to give them pleasure, to give them possibilities, to, expand their horizons, to give them great advice, and to be their like cheerleader and best friend. And you know what? Yeah, you are to some extent. That's part of your role for sure. You can take those on. But sometimes those ideas or ideals actually get in the way of you actually providing your client what they really need, which usually is a pretty decent amount of pain also. So that's really what we're after today, is talk about this pain part of the leverage step, which is finding the motivation inside your client such that they'll make whatever change they really need to make. And so we call this a motivation technique because the basics of motivation are pain and pleasure. Pain is one side of this coin, of this pleasure pain coin. And for 8 out of 10 of your clients, it's going to be the one that actually gets them to make a change. It's going to be the one that gets them to act. So you better master it. You better know it. And if you don't want to, I don't care. And I'm not saying I don't care because I don't care about you. I don't want you to have a great time coaching, but I don't care because your job is to deliver transformation and progress and new results that your client would not have been capable of, or had been likely to, or probable that they would have actually achieved or experienced those things without your coaching. And so this is not about you. This is not about you enjoying and having a great time during the coaching session. This is about your client getting the results that they paid you for. This is literally a part of your responsibility, your, in my opinion, obligation to deliver for your client. So now there's so much in here because I'm not getting into just the esoteric kind of structure of leverage today. I mean, we cover that in training, but I want to give you some words to use. I want to give you some scripted elements, some organizational points that you can then employ immediately to kind of bring out the whip and crack the whip on your client here. So let's just get right into it. Actually, hold on. Fingers crossed, we'll be able to see my slides. Do you see them? I would have no idea if you didn't because I can't see the chat. I can't see the chat with the slides up. We're just going to have to keep our fingers crossed through this. So let's get into it here. So the outcome of these pain motivation techniques is to create enough pain to get your client to threshold. Now, there is a video training or a live stream where I covered this a couple weeks ago in week 5. I'm going to put that up in the tag. It's also going to be in the description of this, wherever you're seeing this video as well. I even put the description on Facebook this time. So Step 2, the leverage step, is actually covered inside those 5 master steps. And I kind of skip you to that point where we cover the overview of the leverage step there. Here is where we actually discuss the pain aspect of it. So inside of the pain motivation techniques that you would do in step 2 of the 5 master steps, this is the outcome. Create enough pain to get your client to threshold. And we also talk about threshold in that video. So if you don't understand what threshold is, check that out. But the simplistic way of putting it is threshold is when your client is at the point where they'll do whatever it takes to change. Where, as it says here, it becomes a must, not just a should, not just a nice idea, but an absolute must to change. That's what the outcome is with these pain motivation techniques. So first, a couple things that you want to be aware of so that you can really understand these scripts and these concepts and these approaches before we get into it. So first of all, there are 2 types of leverage, or 2 types of pain for that matter. Pain is just one form of leverage. There's concrete and then there's emotional. So let's talk about concrete first. Concrete is more, think of it as tangible. Physical is another good way to put it. So physical pain, physical concrete reasons why you would need to change, if you will. Concrete things that cause you pain, basically. So things like people. There are painful things having to do with people. I lose a friend, my friend dies, that's painful, right? I find my soulmate would be a pleasurable aspect of people, right? But it's not just about finding people, it's about the relationships that we have with them, how they treat us, how they see us, who we become to them. These are all aspects of the concrete pleasure or pain of people. And then we've got more of a tangible place. Like, I'm going to jail. That's my new place. That's not a pleasurable place for most people. I go to Hawaii. Sounds a little more pleasurable to me, unless I guess you go to jail in Hawaii. That's not too good. Things are tangible, right? This is concrete pains and pleasures. House burns down. Now that's a loss of a thing, but also there are things that can befall us. Like I don't know what kind of things would occur to you that would be painful, but there are plenty of things that actually could occur to you that is a painful aspect of a thing. Like, my car breaks. Like, it didn't burn down. I didn't lose my car, but it's not working right now. Does that make sense? Buy a nice car, that would be a pleasurable, right? I get the car, it's a pleasurable thing. In the healthy and beauty niche, these have their own little world of pleasure and pain, concrete aspects. I lost weight, I gained weight, depending on where you are in the weight spectrum. It could be pleasurable or painful. I get diabetes, that's a health consequence. It's a physical, tangible thing that occurs, right? That's probably pain for most people. I look terrible, I look sexy, right? Pain, pleasure. You get the idea? So in any niche that you're working with, or in any physical, tangible, external area, something that could be physically, tangibly measured or observed, there are concrete consequences here, some that are pleasurable and some that are painful, and we're going to be working with the pain ones today. Finances and business, another niche, getting money, losing money, obviously pleasure and pain there. Business grows or goes bankrupt, pleasure and pain there. You get the idea, I think, here. Let's move over to emotional now. So emotional leverage or emotional consequences, emotional pain or pleasure would be the feelings inside someone. Now, we're not talking about tangible, measurable things. So, for instance, love is an emotion. Now, people talk about love like it's inside of a person. That's not emotional, that's concrete. Like, I lost my lover, right? My wife divorced me, right? That my kids hate my guts, right? That's not losing love. That's something outside of you has changed. And yes, that may feel painful or feel like you have a loss of a certain emotion, but that's not emotional, that's concrete. Does that make sense? So we're either talking about the external circumstances or we're talking about the internal experiences and emotions that somebody has, right? Make sense? All right, good. I wouldn't know if it made sense or not because I can't see the chat right now, but go ahead and chat anyway because I'll see it when we get out of the slides at some point. So anyway, love is an inside game. You feel love, you lose it, you gain it. Anger, pain, emotion on the inside, right? That's more of an emotional item of pain. Anger is something you feel. Fear, depression, obviously. Gratefulness would be a pleasure emotion that you feel. Excitement, usually pleasurable for most people, but you could lose it or gain it. And so losing excitement for something, maybe feel being boredom, that could be painful. Then you've got maybe the emotion of pride. You can't measure pride. You can't like give me some pride. You can do some things or say some things or give me some things that then trigger me to feel internally, feel emotional pride, right? Or do something or take something from me or give me something that actually makes me feel like I've lost pride. But the pride is inside. The pride is not outside. People think that these things are on the outside, but they're really not. They're processes that we do inside our bodies, inside our minds. That makes sense, right? So these are the emotional sides. Now, quick review, and again, I sent you to that video. I gave you a tag to it. It's also in the description. This was in week 5. We went over these 5 master steps, and this is the leverage step. And we covered these kind of 5 internal steps to leverage: logic and reason, attack and confess, hell if you don't, heaven if you do, and then finally action. Now action's kind of outside of the leverage. That's usually when we've moved on to other steps, but you get the idea. There's really 4 major steps that happen within the leverage step. Each of them can be very helpful or very important as well. So we're not going to cover all of these today, but we are going to cover the pain points, the ones where we focus on the pain. And again, these 2 areas, attack and confess and hell if you don't, these are the areas where you coaches tend to be pretty inept. Now, some coaches are better than others. They're better at putting the screws to somebody than others. You know, I've been well trained in this. I know this is my tendency to enjoy the attack and confess conversational framework or the hell if you don't framework. But when I'm really on my game, I can nail these areas. And that has radically changed how much of a difference I've made for people, how much value I can add to your life as a client. And then also, frankly, in return, how much money I've made and how many clients have sung my praises over the years as a real transformational coach as well. So attack and confess and hell if you don't. These are the areas where there's a lot of pain going on, and we want to get good at this, not because we want to hurt somebody, but because we really care enough about our client to put them through some short-term pain in the session today so they can have long-term transformation, pleasure, progress, and value tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. That's what we're after here. And again, we talk about this in training quite a bit. So we're going to cover each of these in terms of the pain aspect of it. And I'm going to give you some scripting points for this as well. So let's start with attack and confess. These are attack and confess methods. So first thing is, we're in the leverage step. So we need to understand what leverage, people have different leverage in them. They have different values. They have different beliefs. They have different mores. They have different ideals. They have different goals. You can find leverage everywhere in your client. How do you know where the leverage is for attacking your client? Because we got to attack now, right? So I'm going to give you some ideas and areas that as you're diagnosing, as you're kind of listening to your client and trying to understand your client, you can notate and notice areas that you might attack later or that you can immediately attack, if it's the right time and place for it, depending on your method and your approach to the leverage conversation. So what is leverage to attack? Let's get into it. First of all, immorality. Anything that's truly immoral for your client, you can really step up. Now, again, some clients are not exactly the most moral people, right? So that might not be as opportune an area to attack them in. But if you have any rapport or any sense that this is a relatively moral person, anything that is obviously immoral or it's really immoral, it's intensely immoral, you should attack that with intensity, and because, it gives you a foothold through which you can generate the kind of pain that you need to generate for your client. And immorality is one area where your client should feel some pain, chances are, if that's really what they're engaging in. Anything that hurts other people. Now, obviously, that's pretty immoral, right? But obviously, there's exceptions to that as well. So if other people are being hurt, especially people in your client's tribe, their family, their close friends, loved ones, people they really deeply care about, that's the area to really attack, okay? Because, who wouldn't attack somebody for hurting other people, especially if they know that the person you're attacking actually doesn't want to see those other people be hurt? It's just obvious. Heck, your client's probably going to align with you on that even while you're attacking them, for that matter. So it's a very powerful area of attack, and it's something that you probably won't get a lot of pushback on either. If you really are accurate in your attack. Dishonesty, it's kind of an easy and simple one. Now, not everybody values honesty, but dishonesty is definitely an area that you can attack. And people tend to try to act as if they're quite honest people. And so, yeah, if you feel that your client is really wants to at least appear to be honest, if not really feels that honesty is important to them, it's a great area of attack if you know there's some dishonesty going on. Stupidity. Now, not everybody cares about this, right? But if you are around a client that they want to feel smart, like I myself like to do, saying something is pretty stupid is a pretty big attack to make, and it could actually be quite effective. Anything that contradicts your client's top values or needs. So if you know what your client values, they make most important in their life, hey, if they're living some way or thinking something or doing something or feeling something that contradicts that flies in the face of that, attack it. Especially, by the way, if their needs, if their survival needs, and we talk about this in the training quite a bit. We've even talked about it in the live stream. So I'm not going to belabor review on survival needs, but if you know your client is really strong with one of these needs and they're doing something that totally contradicts that, and it's obvious and something you think they'll agree with you on, attack the heck out of it. So I'll give you some scripting points for attacking areas where your client may be contradicting their most valued survival needs. Let's go into these. And you should use, or at least consider using, some of this languaging as you are attacking your client, right? So you might say, if your client is significance driven, you might say something like, John, look, I'm telling you, you're playing small here. Right? That's an attack right there. Just saying playing small. For a significance driven John, playing small is an attack. It's like, no, I'm not, they're going to want to defend that probably, or they'll realize it and get motivated around it, kind of in a painful way. If your client is sandbagging expectations and they're an achiever, they're significance driven, they're a prideful person, you can say, look, why do you have such low expectations about this? You've really lowered the bar on yourself here, right? That's some wording that you might use. The word loser is something that in our society these days, few leaders have used this very commonly as an attack, right? So again, obviously, you're not looking to try to put your client down. You're not trying to destroy your client's self-esteem or something like that. But for the sake of the leverage step, these kind of very intense words that could even have your client attack you back within the realm of rapport and within the realm of ethical coaching, for a very short period of time, you can use very intense language to provoke your client through an attack. Again, and we're not going to stay in the attack. We're not just going to constantly attack our client the way some leaders do, right? We're going to attack and then confess, and we're going to turn that attack around on ourselves. So we'll get to that in a second. But look, John, why? It sounds like you're really being a big loser here, right? That's, if the shoe fits, there's nothing wrong with saying something like that in the moment to create that attacking sense in the conversation. Something being very common or same as everybody else. Somebody who's significance driven hates feeling like they're like everybody else. So, wow, this is so typical. This is so common, John. What your problem that you're talking about, where you did this and you did this and then you acted this way, that's just so typical. The reason I can see that is because I've seen it in a lot of people. This is like the same as everybody else I coach. Now, for some people, that would actually feel like a badge of honor. It's like, oh, I'm like everybody else. But a significance-driven individual wants to set themselves apart. So this area is an attack for them a lot of times. Anything that's low status. Now, obviously, you might not use the word status, but you could utilize language that indicates, wow, this is kind of a cheap shot. Or, that's a real scarcity mentality there, John. Just anything that for John would be a hot button that would evoke a sense of low status. Wow, that's a real underhanded thing to do, John, right? That's a real ghetto thing to do. It's probably not the greatest words, but you get the idea. It's just like you utilize wording that John will feel is a low status thing. You attach his behavior or his attitude or his mindset to the thing that John would not want to feel because he's so significance driven. Make sense? All right. Weak, cowardly, sheltered. These are amazingly important words to use if the shoe fits again. Wow, John, I mean, you're really being a coward here, aren't you? I mean, you really just want to stay sheltered, don't you, John? Now, some people, even significance driven people, that may not be leverage for them. That may not be something that they feel they need to attack, that is an attack for them, because maybe for them significance is being sheltered, right? I doubt it, but it's possible. So again, you gotta choose your battles here. Shameful, stupid, those are things that probably somebody who's significance driven would not feel real good about. Let's move over to the next survival need, certainty. So if somebody's really certainty driven, attacks on them or things that they'll perceive as an attack might be unreliable, inconsistent. Wow, John, that's pretty unreliable of you to do it that way or to feel that way. Or, you're sounding really inconsistent to me. Or risky or gambling. Like, John, this is really, you're like really gambling with this relationship here, aren't you? Right? So somebody's certainty driven, they're not going to like that. They're not going to feel, they're going to feel like that really is an attack, because they probably value highly or even pride themselves on being risk averse, on being reliable, right? Things like convoluted or contorted indicate something's weird or crazy or unstable, right? So, well, that's pretty convoluted, John, or I can see how you're contorting yourself here to attempt to avoid responsibility. You get the idea? Crazy, weird, and unsafe, or unsafe and insecure, right? So these are things that somebody's certainty driven would feel pain about, chances are. That's really crazy, John, to do that. Or you really creating a sense of, you sound really insecure about this, right? These types of words would be an attack for John, the certainty-driven client. Dramatic, also, for somebody certainty-driven, usually they're trying to divorce themselves from drama. So, hey, you really being a drama queen here. I mean, obviously, John, you'd say a drama king, right? But either way, drama would probably be considered an attack if you lay that on John here as a device for your attack. Dishonesty, lying, usually certainty-driven people like to make sure they're accurate or they're truthful or they're dealing with reality as well, because certainty-driven people, that stuff matters to them. So, hey, John, you sound like a real liar here. That is a huge attack, probably an attack on anybody, right? But especially for somebody who's very certainty driven. All right, let's move over to love. Somebody who's love driven, these words that we're talking about here would be huge attacks if they at all fit. So hateful, hurtful, uncaring, nasty. Well, that's a really hurtful thing to say or do or feel or think that, right? That mindset that you want them to be motivated to change, there's your attack right there. You're becoming a really hurtful person, John. Somebody who's love driven, that's going to be a huge attack for them. They're going to hate that. If nothing, even if they don't feel it as an attack, they're going to feel the leverage that comes with that attack. And this is the place or the time after logic and reason where you jump in with this kind of stuff to lead you to the hell if you don't type of step. Anything that's arrogant, because loving people who want to be loved as well, want to experience love, last thing they want to feel is arrogant. You say that to a significance-driven individual, they probably say thanks for the compliment there, right? But somebody who's love-driven, hey, that's really arrogant, John. They're going to hate that because it takes away love or robs them of their loving persona that they're probably trying to take on there. Insensitive, that's pretty insensitive. Isolated, distant, separated. I remember one time somebody in my mastermind said, you're creating distance between yourself and your daughter. You're creating a feeling of distance. I didn't agree with him, but it really kind of yanked my chain for a little while thinking that, because, I'm a love-driven guy, So isolation, separation, distance, these are things that are divisive, as it says here. It's more of a political term, I guess, but you get the idea. These are things that separate other people from each other, distance people from each other, or distance you from other people, distance your client from other people. Really amazing attacks to offer to somebody who's big time love driven. Alone or lonely, huge. It's like, wow, you are totally alone, aren't you, John? That's a pretty effective attack for somebody who is love driven to just dish that out to them. Rejected or bullied. Now again, like, you wouldn't say, wow, John, you're really being bullied. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you say, hey, you've been bullying so-and-so, or you What does it feel like to be rejected? That would be a little bit of an attack, and there's definitely leverage that you could attack there. What's it like to feel totally rejected like this, John? If what John created caused that rejection for him and it took away love for him, he's going to hate that, and that attack is going to be pretty effective, chances are. All right, let's move over to the next one, variety. So now this is not as common, but some people are variety nuts. So you use these kind of words as an attack. Wow, that's really boring, John. It's a pretty boring approach you have here, John. Or John, are you seriously going to do that old, overused, kind of same old mindset? Been there, done that. This is a big one for variety oriented people, frankly, for love oriented as well, because they want to feel that particular thing, even significance to some extent. You're dead inside, John, right? You're like, your life is like a flat line right now, so that kind of thing. For somebody that really wants to feel really any of these needs, anything other than certainty, chances are the dead inside tactic or conversation attack would be quite effective. That is a perfect attack for variety-driven people. It's like, wow, John, you're being pretty rigid here. It's pretty inflexible of you. Or how dare you be so rigid? How dare you be so inflexible here? Get how that's attacking language. For somebody who's a variety nut, who's probably prides themselves on agility or thinks agility and flexibility and freedom is like critical and important to them, probably. Monotonous, sheltered, anything like that, that's going to be probably considered an attack on a variety nut. All right. The final leverage that you might consider attacking is anything selfish. Now, again, some people kind of pride themselves on their selfishness. So you may not do that with the most prideful, significance-driven jerk that you're coaching, but most people are going to take that as an attack, and that's going to be leverage for them. And this is something we talk about in the Jolt technique, and I will be linking to either maybe in a tag, we'll see, but definitely in the description, the playlist that I put together that includes the Jolt technique, and it covers all the motivational coaching videos that I've created so far as well. So that's going to give you a deeper dive into different aspects of motivation within somebody that are, of course, leverage that you can tap into as well. So feel free to take advantage of those videos. I'll put it in the tag somewhere right now, assuming I remember where we are in the video. So I'll do it if at all possible. So the elephant in the room, as we talk about in the Jolt technique, is that thing that nobody wants to talk about, that nobody wants to admit, that is obvious, but is something that everybody seems to be dancing around in your client's life. And your job is just to throw that elephant right back in their face as intensely and as obviously and like just as tactlessly, so to speak, as possible. Just throw it out there and say it in the most intense and most provocative terms. You can't pull punches here in the attack phase, and the elephant in the room is the area where that's going to jolt your client, which is why it's a part of the Jolt technique for that matter. Okay, next. So we talked about all these different leveraging points and some words, in fact, that you might choose from leverage points that you can utilize in the attack and confess step, things that you might attack that you've noticed as you've been diagnosing your client. So how do you do this then? What words would you use? What's the script to attack and confess? Let's get to it. So first, let's talk about the attack portion. First you attack, then you confess. That's why it's in that order. So first, tell them what you think with no editing. Use the most intense language. Tell them the things that you know they don't want to hear. That's going to expose what's important. Does that make sense? This is straight out of Jolt technique right here. So things like this, these would be literally words that you'd use. And I apologize, I don't have this in red, so it's obvious that these would be your words, but create some kind of worksheet or a process where you can download it and utilize that, and we'll fix the slides later. But things like, how dare you, or how could you, or what kind of blank would blank? Like blank would be the name you'd call that person in the attack, and then the second blank would be the behavior or the mindset or the way of thinking about things, etc. So what kind of bastard would yell at their family, right? What kind of stupid person would run away from their business opportunities, right? You get the idea? It's like behavior or mindset. So like, what kind of idiot would think with that kind of scarcity thinking, right? That's establishing it in a mindset, right? So it's all Mad Libs. This is just fill in the blanks with elements of language names to call somebody, identities or roles to apply to them, deserve it or not, and then behaviors or mindsets that you've observed in them through the diagnosis portion of your conversation. Who do you think you are doing blank? Who do you think you are feeling blank? Who do you think you are thinking blank? Who do you think you are being blank? Right? Again, whatever the thing is that you're attacking at that point, that's what you would put in here. I remember one time my coach just really lit into me. He was like, how dare you? How dare you? How dare you? Just repeated that a bunch of times, really intensely. And I still remember it to this day. This is why it's in the scripting, because I learned it from my coach at some point. I really made changes based upon that conversation that we had. Obviously, it wasn't just that provocative language that he used, but it was certainly helpful to get my full attention. So by the way, going back here, let me see, can I go back? Okay, yes, I can. So this is really the languaging right here. How dare you? How could you? What kind of blank would blank? Who do you think you are? Blanking blank, 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 right? Just all, obviously you've got to fill in the blanks here, and a good diagnosis provides you the things that you would fill in. So in the attack portion, you are either going to want to soften your attack because maybe somebody's pretty sensitive, or you might even want to intensify your attack. So let's cover, first of all, amplifiers. So to amplify your attack, you'd use more expletives, any word that you're not willing to use, because you feel it's improper or something like that, reduces your freedom, flexibility, and power in the conversation. I remember one time I called literally on a live demonstration in front of hundreds of people, I called a client, somebody who we were doing a demonstration with, a pussy. And then years later, when somebody was watching this, like on a video or something, they messaged me and they were saying, how could you use that word? It's so sexist. It's so this and this and this. And they told me all their credentials as far as like the word police and why they are an expert in using the right language, the proper language, the correct language. And, some people really believe you just can't use certain words because the words themselves are damaging. And of course, the reality is, if we're smart about this, there is no word that damages somebody. There's a mindset that damages somebody. There's a particular interchange or a relationship that could, be quite upsetting to somebody, obviously, right? But words don't hurt people. People's mindsets and meanings about those words hurt people, right? So when I was talking to my particular client at the time, this gentleman, you could tell he was a very prideful person, and he probably prided himself on being courageous and a go-getter and everything. So calling him a pussy in the language of his particular generation was actually quite effective. It was the perfect word to use, as I was attacked, of course, later on for being so mindless and not mindful enough with my wording. Some mindful person that's like meditating on the top of a mountain would never have reached that gentleman because they didn't properly communicate to them effectively enough to actually reach them in a way where they're going to actually hear it and feel the pain that was needed for them to get the leverage at that point. So, it's up to you the language you use, right? But I have no holds barred when I'm working with a client, and anything goes as long as I know it's going to make a difference for that client long term. I really don't care what somebody else thinks about it. If somebody decides that I'm a horrible person because I used a word, then, so be it. I'm willing to die on that sword because I care enough about that client to cause them the results they deserve for having stepped up in this position, because I will be unrelenting with them until they transform in the way they need to. And the leverage step requires some expletives, some things that are probably going to jar your client, interrupt their pattern, have them feel the real intensity of what you're trying to offer them. If you use just perfect clinical language and everything is very clinical and everything is very, you should not do that because it's not proper. I mean, come on. Like, yes, some people that'll be effective enough, but most people, they'll just be like asleep on the phone with you. You're never going to reach them. You're certainly not going to be able to complete the attack and confess step. So you got to use some guttural language with them that's going to jar them to some extent. And again, you got to tailor this to the client as well. You got to be smart about that too. Additional adjectives, right? Any adjectives that'll spruce up or spice up the conversation. Adverbs as well, of course, any modifiers that deepen or increase the intensity of that particular conversation. Volume, tone, right? Certain tone is very, very intense. whereas other tone is just very Mickey Mouse, And if I tell you, how dare you do this like in this tone, you're just going to laugh at me, aren't you? But if I say, how dare you? And I get really intense and I enunciate that word and I utilize a tonality that has intensity and maybe some anger to it, and I can take on that emotion within my own tonality. It doesn't mean it has to be authentic. I mean, that could be a bit of a temporary act or so, but if you do that, you can be much more effective with certain clients that need to hear that tone in you to amplify the intensity of that attack. Softeners. Now, this is in case, there's somebody who's really sensitive and you know that any word you say might just blow them away. You don't want to kill a rabbit with a cannon, right? So we got to scale down for that individual, right? So softeners would be things like, this is literally scripting, like, well, some might say that you're being a jerk, right? Or if I was really in your face about it, I'd probably say. So this is a mechanism that is very effective called quoting. So when you quote others or you quote like even yourself, but you're putting it inside of a quoting mechanism, nobody's going to feel like you're actually saying that. I mean, obviously you kind of are, right? But unconsciously they're going to remove themselves. They're going to disassociate from that statement because you're disassociating yourself from that statement. Some might say you're being a jerk about this. If I was really in your face, I'm not in your face about, I'm not going to attack you about this, but if I really wanted to attack you about this, I'd probably say, how dare you be such a jerk to your family in this particular circumstance, right? So you're quoting yourself as if you were to say that, but you're not really saying that. Hey, look, I'm not saying that, but if I was really in your face about it, I'd probably say something like this. Make sense? That's called quoting. Do you think maybe you're being a jerk about this? Hear that sheepish maybe tone, that questioning tone? If you couch this in a question, they can say, oh, no, that's not me at all, right? But you still got the attack out in a very soft way. You could say something like, you'd be much more uncertain. I don't know if this is right, but my first intuition is that you're being a total jerk about this. Or my first intuition is that you are really being a pussy when it comes to this particular area of your life. Right? Again, you're admitting you don't know, which softens the blow of that particular attack. You still may think it, but you don't know it. Now, if you say it as if you know it, that's a whole different level of intensity, and you'll get different blowback. You'll get different results depending on your client. So you got to calibrate. How intense can I be about this? How much rapport will I lose if I'm this intense about it? How much will this person be would be intimidated or scared by my tone or my words if I use this particular approach? So you just need to think about this before you attack. Final softeners here. Is it possible that you're being a total wimp, right? Is it possible that you are dividing your family? Is it possible that you are totally alone on this, right? I know you're not an absolute imbecile that's too stupid to see that the business, critical business operation step that you need to take is this, because I know you just told me that, but the fact that you're not doing it just makes me think that, I don't know. I know that's not who you are, right? So again, you're saying, I know this is not you, but you're bringing it out as a potential attack, so to speak. But you're softening it because you're saying that's not what I'm saying. You shouldn't think that you're stupid for not doing this. Of course, when you say that, they automatically kind of think that they are because the unconscious mind doesn't understand negatives. But again, you're softening this to some extent. Even with a very intense attack, you're still going to soften it using language like this. I know that's not who you are, even if there are moments where you act like blank, or you act like that, right? So that would be an after softener, like you'd attack and then you'd say, hey, look, I know that's not who you are. Like, look, let me tell you something. I've noticed from what you're telling me, like you're being a total selfish jerk and you're isolating the people around you and robbing them of your heart. And that's one of the most unloving, nasty things I've seen very many people do. But, actually, to tell you the truth, I know that's not who you are. Even if there are moments where you act like that, which it sounds like you have. Is that fair? This is almost getting into the confessing area when you say something like, I know that's not who you are, right? That's could be a part of the confess. But confessing is a little bit more specific to you kind of calling one on yourself. So we'll get to that actually right now. So the confess portion of the attack and confess. So we've already attacked. Hopefully you can get that part. At this point, your client is ready to hang up on you. They're ready to yell at you. They're ready to cry. Or they're already doing those things, right? That is possible, depending on your rapport level. If nothing else, they're not liking you too much in that moment. They're probably hating your guts a little bit. So that's at the moment where you want to confess. Now, confessing is basically a fancy way of saying you're going to attack yourself the same way you attacked your client, because everything we've seen our clients do, we have in some way, shape, or form, maybe not done the same action, but we've prevaricated the same, we've experienced the same emotional patterns to some extent. Maybe not to the intensity they have. I wouldn't think like, I've been as violent in my mind as Ted Bundy has, or the Unabomber has, or something like that, right? But I have been violent in my thoughts at times, right? I have been pretty intensely hateful, right? So if I was attacking the Unabomber, I would say, you know what? I haven't bombed people, but I felt like bombing people at one point or another. That's the confession. Does that make sense? This is what keeps the rapport through a very intense attack, right? Or after a very intense attack. It gets the rapport back. So you're kind of breaking rapport temporarily. You're maybe doing an act temporarily. Maybe this is not the most authentic version of how you operate, but you do it temporarily and then you come back to reality. We've all done this. In fact, we all do this every day. We lie to ourselves. We lie to each other. We BS ourselves. We're inauthentic. We act one way and we're really another. And then we snap back to reality. Most people, frankly, don't even snap back to reality. Hopefully, as leaders and coaches, we're doing that. So anyway, I've felt or done that exact same thing myself many times. The many times is a really great confession. It's like I haven't just hated once. I've hated many times. And by the way, many times for you could be like 4 times. Right? It's just a really great way. So, because you're kind of slamming down on your client right now when you attack, you're kind of coming down to their level. You're not condescending. This has got to be honest. It's got to be sincere. You got to sincerely admit and confess that you have been that way too. Many times, if the shoe fits, if you could honestly say that. And I can't let you do this because I know how much the same thing has impacted me. Right? So, hey, I've done this myself, but I also can't let you continue this. Not like you're really in charge of them, right? But in the moment, you're taking a very strong stance. So it's like, hey, I've done the same thing, but truth is, I can't let you do it because I know how much the same thing impacted me when I did that. And I know it wasn't okay for me. I'm guessing it's not okay for you either. Does that make sense, that conversational framework here? All right. Or you can just say, hey, it's totally human. Now, again, obviously, it's not totally human to murder people, right? If you're working with, I don't know who's going to see this as working with a murderer, but obviously there's the extensiveness of the behavior, but every behavior is coupled with emotions, right? And so even though not everybody murders people, everybody feels similar emotions to those murderers in some way. Obviously, some murders have a bit of a screw loose there. I don't know how we got into this forensic files conversation, but just want to make sure this is clear that we're not condoning things here, right? I'm not saying, hey, it's okay that you killed 10 people, or hey, it's okay that you beat your husband or wife, or, it's like, no, we're not saying that. We're not condoning abuse or hurtfulness or anything that is obviously not something that is up to our standards as coaches, leaders, and human beings, members of the human family. But if a human did it, it is human to do that, right? Even the things that we say are inhumane are things that are human behaviors because humans have actually done them. And we don't have to say that's human, but we can at least say, you know what? I know because we've diagnosed accurately at this point, I know the emotional pattern that you went through that made you torture that pet or, whatever horrible thing that we're imagining right now, right? I know that emotional pattern that you had. You know what? It's totally human to feel scared. It's totally human to feel abusive. It's totally human to feel angry or maniacal, whatever it is, right? It's totally human to feel any human emotion, right? That's what makes it human, right? So you could say that even if you haven't felt that, it's totally, look, it's human. It's a human emotion to feel that. Now, you may not say everyone has felt that or done that, but you could say for most of the emotions that most of the people that you work with have felt or are feeling, you could say everybody's felt that before. And for a lot of things, in fact, most of the things that your clients have done, you can say everybody has done something like that. Something abusive, something hurtful, something shocking, something dumb, right? Get the idea? So this is more confessing for the human race, so to speak. All right, so we've just covered the attack and confess methods. Now let's move on to hell if you don't. Hopefully at this point you really get a good idea of what it's like to attack and what it's like to confess. Hey John, you know what? I got to tell you, you're being a total pussy here with this way of hiding out in your business. And I got to tell you, I think most business owners would probably look at what you're doing, including yourself as my guest, tell me if I'm wrong, and say, this is pretty stupid not to do this and this and this to save your business and turn it around. And how dare you rob your fellow coworkers or your employees of the chance to have a great job when you could have done something about it right now? How dare you rob them of that? How dare you do this to them and yourself? How lousy is that? And at the same time, I got to tell you, John, the reason I'm sharing this is because I've been that same pussy myself at times. I've been scared. I've been intimidated by something and held back and been frozen in my business for that matter. I've done stupid things like that. It's totally human to do that, and I can understand why. Not everybody's done that, but probably most business owners have many times. Boom, we just finished the attack and confess step. Does that make sense? Can you get the gist of why the attack is effective, but why confessing is so critical to manage the conversation such that you don't suddenly have like an enemy and somebody who never wants to talk to you again? We're not trying to wreck our coaching relationship. We're just attempting to jar them enough and jolt them enough and attack them enough such that they get this is serious and they can take on some of that attack. Maybe not the intensity that we share, sometimes with more intensity depending on how kind of fragile they are or how sensitive they are too. And then we confess to retain that rapport so we could be friends again, or so they can feel like they're not completely like beat into the ground here, because that's not what we're after doing. But we got to beat them a little bit. We got to whip them a little bit here to get the leverage section off to a really powerful start. So that's the attack and confess portion of leverage. All right, now let's get into hell if you don't. Once again, these are the areas where most coaches are very inept or they hold back and they're not willing to actually do the work that is required of them, unfortunately. How dare you rob your client of this, right, as I attack you. So let's get into hell if you don't. So the intention of the hell if you don't point is to create massive unbearable pain for your client. Emotionally, you're not trying to beat them physically here. And to help your client associate massive, consistent, never-ending, and unbearable pain to their current decision, their current state, their current way of thinking, whatever it is that needs to change in them. We're trying to get them to associate massive pain to that. And hell if you don't is there to do that for us. So what is the common leverage for the hell if you don't? And really this is more of an overall what is common leverage question, because the hell if you don't area is where all the pain is dredged up. This is where we get into the most common leverage for any client. So what is it? So we're going to cover some common areas and some things that are more universal. So anything around the kids. Your client's got kids, leverage is almost always, especially for a mother, but fathers too, depending on how involved they are and how connected they are with their kids and how much they really love their kids. Mothers and fathers both, parents, anything around their kids that might hurt the kids or might threaten the kids or might be something that disconnects them from their kids. You get the idea. That's massive leverage. And so take advantage of that. Not in an unscrupulous way, but in a way where you truly share it because you care about them and their kids, for that matter. Any missed values and needs, if they're number one. So any values or needs that this pattern is robbing them of or is making it so they don't get to fulfill those values and needs as highly. Those of you in training know what I'm talking about in values and needs. I'm not going to belabor that point right now, but the bottom line is certain things your client has deep needs around or they value very highly. It's the most important thing to them in their life. So if there's something that they're missing out on, like maybe somebody's being very standoffish and their number one value is love, and they're missing out on love because they're standoffish, I could say something like, well, I could get in the attack, and then I might say something like, John, you are totally alone, and you're totally unloved, and you totally miss out on love as a result of being so standoffish. Can you understand that? How does it feel to, anyway, I'm getting into the scripting of it, but I'm focusing on John's missed value that he values. Now, certain people don't care about love that much, right? It's not very high on their list. I'm not going to use that with John if that's not John, right? So values and needs, if they're number one especially. Also, common leverage for the hell if you don't, or really any part of the leverage portion, leverage step in the 5 master steps, is anything around the primary vehicles in your client's life. So kids can be a primary vehicle for certain people, right? Because their kids are everything to them, right? But for some people, family is everything, the whole family. Some people, the job is everything, or a relationship is everything, or money is everything. You get the idea. Any primary vehicle that's everything to them, that's the leverage right there. I would definitely, crack the whip on that particular area, whatever that is, especially if that area is threatened or hurt or somehow lost or at risk because of the pattern that you want them to associate pain to. So top goals, dreams, these are included in vehicles, obviously. So most vehicles have goals or dreams centered around them. So if something threatens a goal or a dream, this is where you'd bring it up. Their current focus, the vehicle that's already working for them, like if something's already working really well and their pattern that they're up to could threaten that, bring it up. Talk about how it hurts that area or how it lowers their standards or their achievement in that particular area. That's huge leverage. That's definitely hell if you don't. Anything that's inconsistent with their identity. It's one of the most powerful forces in the human psyche is the need to remain consistent for who you think you are and who you feel that everybody else thinks you are as well. Try to be consistent with, sometimes those are different identities, but basically both those identities. So if I know John prides himself on, being, I don't know, let's say a defender of all that is right, I could say something like, you're doing the exact opposite of that right now, John. I mean, you're like somebody who's perpetrating wrongdoing. That's who you're becoming. This is somebody who's more of a wrongdoer rather than somebody who defends. You're not defending other people, you're hurting them, right? I want to turn that around, that identity, rob them of that identity very briefly. Huge leverage for somebody that actually feels that that's their identity. Anything that's inconsistent with their primary peer group and or their peers' expectations of them. We talked about this, I think, in a certification somewhere around the need to rise to the expectations of your peer group. So if there's something that the peer group expects or some standard that the peer group has that your client doesn't abide by or doesn't meet because of their pattern, this would be an area that you could definitely cover in the hell if you don't portion of the leverage step. Everything covered in the attack items are all fodder for hell if you don't as well. Being like or doing like something or someone they hate or despise. So if there's something they despise or someone they hate or something like that, and they're going to be like that or they're going to act like that, this would be where you bring that up in hell if you don't. You obviously can attack on this as well. Actions they despise, identities they despise, emotions they despise, beliefs they despise. You get the idea. You're being like George out there who's such a hateful person, or you're supposed to be such a lover and here you are being a hater and you hate haters, right? You get the idea here. All right, anything that contradicts or destroys their most intense or emotional beliefs. Now, by this time, you've probably gotten some rapport. You probably understand John pretty well or your client pretty well. So whatever they believe very deeply and they're very intense beliefs for them that they abide by, their philosophy, if you will, what they believe about life or people or whatever, themselves, then anything they're up to here in this pattern that contradicts any of those be huge leverage for them. So those are areas that you could cover for the hell if you don't aspect of the leverage step. Now let's get into scripting. This is where the actual words come out. So what's the script for hell if you don't? So we've got 2 methods, and then we have kind of a period that we put at the end of this. So method number 1 would be questions. This is more indirect approach. Do you want blank? Do you want to be a liar? Or, hey, do you want your kids to turn out, abusive like you are being right now? You get the idea. Do you want blank? Whatever bad thing, whatever consequence that we've discovered is the thing that we want to provoke them to think about and imagine and feel the pain of. Is that blank who you are, right? Is being an abusive jerk who you are? Is being a scared little pussy who you are, right? You get the idea? Like, this is where you fling out the lousy language and then we just put it as an identity question. Is that your life? Is that what your life is about? Is that what your life is about? Or that's what you're about? Get that? So is that your life? Is that what your life is about? Is that who you are? Is that who you're about? Is that the destiny you plan to experience? Especially if we talk about future issues, future hell if you don't, that would be where I would go with that. So you're just going to screw over your blank. So anybody where this pattern is hurting them, you screw over your family, you screw over your friends, you screw over your clients, you're going to screw over your team, right? Question mark, right? So you're just going to screw them over? Question mark. And then wham, we've got leverage, especially if those are vehicles, those people are people that your client really cares about. How would it feel if blank? Or how will it feel when these people hate your guts for doing this? How will it feel when you are, broke as a result of this? How will it feel when you lose your family? How will it feel when you lose your health because of this? Get that? So when blank, or again, I just talked about losses, but also there could be negative consequences. How will it feel when, this particular thing crashes and burns on you? Or how will it feel when the government comes after you for these things that you've done, right? So it may not be a loss, but it's something that probably create a sense of loss in somebody. How do you feel about that? How does that feel? How does it feel to all of these? How does it feel? How does it feel? Type of questions would be really good places to finish the method 1 because it evokes more feelings. They have to tell you their feelings rather than you trying to make them feel something. All right. Method 2 would be statements. This is when you don't ask them, you don't give them an option to tell you if they'll feel this or this. You actually are telling them what's going to happen, or the concrete leverage or the emotional leverage. So now one line of statements would be the missing out line. So it's things that they'll miss, things that they'll lose. Hey, if you don't quit smoking, you're going to miss out on enjoying your children and running and playing with them someday when you die, right? Because your cardio isn't up to snuff, right? But that's a missing out line, right? As long as you blank, you're never going to have or be or do blank. This is one that my coach used to use with me around my business. Like, hey, as long as you don't follow through on this stuff, you're never going to have the successful business that you want, right? And that was really big leverage for me. That got me into action, right? So this is just another framework that you can utilize around missing out. As long as you, whatever pattern, whatever mindset, whatever action, etc., you're trying to get them to experience pain around, associate pain to so they want to change it, you're never going to have, be, or do blank. That's missing out on something, and that second blank needs to be something they really deeply care about. Then there's the consequences line of statements. So, like, again, this is like the negative things that will actually befall them. If you don't quit smoking, you're going to get emphysema and die. That's just a straight statement. Consequence, not losing some, obviously they're losing their life too, you could couch it in that, but this is a negative thing that will befall them. Make sense? Very, very similar to the loss line, just a little different. Finally, after these 2 methods, now you could use both methods, you could use one or the other. In the hell if you don't approach, finally you get into an agreement conversation. You get them to agree with you that these things will come to pass if they don't change, or are already coming to pass because they haven't changed. If it's a present type of thing, I always recommend pushing any of these conversations far off into the future to look at the worst consequence that would happen if they didn't change, not just now, but a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And things get worse generally when we let things go on that long, right? So if you push it out far enough in the future, it gets more painful. And then you get them to agree that these things will come to pass. Like, hey, that's actually probably going to happen if I don't actually make a change here. Ask them, do you agree or disagree, right? So if you're talking to them about stuff, you're making statements, hey, do you agree or disagree with that statement? Or say, this is what's going to happen. Do you agree? Does that make sense? Anything to get them to say yes or agree with you there. Now, they don't have to. They can disagree, right? They can mildly disagree or they can intensely disagree. But fine, at least you know. Because if they disagree with you, you failed to get leverage, right? I mean, unless they're just lying to you, you failed to get leverage. So you better know this, and if they don't say they agree or they don't kind of jibe with something that you're telling them that shows that they feel the pain inside, they feel the leverage deeply and intensely within them, you got work to do. And you got to go back into these methods or anything else that we've already taught you in the leverage steps. So that is everything. I mean, that's everything around these 2 aspects of leverage. So anyway, the point of the matter is that inside of leverage, we're not trying to figure out what the leverage is because we already know what it is. Now all we're doing is we're evoking that leverage in our client. And these 2 methods are critical to utilize that almost no coach utilizes. I mean, very few of them really do it effectively, if at all. And you will be the 1 in a million coach for your client if you can effectively practice this, if you can effectively learn it, if you can do it with the right tonality such that it invokes this kind of pain in your client. Right? Pain is a darn good thing because 8 out of 10 people, they won't act without a tremendous amount of pain underneath them. Right? So take advantage of it. Use it. Better you than somebody else that they have no rapport with and that they don't trust, and they're not going to continue having a conversation with them. You're going to stick with them to make sure that they don't just stay in pain, but they're going to move past the pain. So the attack and confess step, that's what really jars them, gets their attention, gets you grappling with them. And then the hell if you don't step is the part where the pain is deepened. Because, I mean, some people are in pain when you attack, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people are like used to getting attacked. So it just gets their attention, wakes them up. The hell if you don't is when they really start feeling that pain deeply. Just breaking rapport with somebody and punching them in the face is not enough. I mean, that's a good start, right? I mean, we do want to do that to some extent, but it's not enough. You've got to go farther. You've got to go deeper and take them all the way to hell, whatever the deepest dungeon of hell for them is. And you probably by this point, if you diagnose well, you already know what that hell is, right? So now you've got the scripting of it. Write this stuff down. We will create like a worksheet around this soon enough where we actually give you the scripting for students of strategy immersion training. We will put that together because, I mean, heck, we got it all in the slides. I mean, I just got to put it in more of a workbook. So look forward to that. But feel free to check out the replay if you missed some of this and take a lot of notes if you're not in the training and use this stuff. You like go out there, steal it, use it with your clients, and make a difference. And let me know what a difference it made. I'd love to hear what kind of transformation this stuff actually started to cause in your clients. And then secondly, I also hope that in these conversations that you've gotten enough value so you felt it was worth your time spending with me whenever you're watching this. And if this is in a public platform still and we haven't hidden it from view, if you could share this with other leaders, if you can help us help other coaches, leaders, managers, people that you know need access to these ways of making a difference for people because they care enough to do it. You know, being my partner in that area is something I'd be very grateful for if you can see your way to do that. If you don't know who to share it with or who to push it over to or email it to or anything like that, that's cool. Just like wherever when you're watching this, like the Facebook video, like especially the YouTube video, because YouTube will share this with you more and share it with other people more, the more we like this kind of stuff. If you want more of these live streams when they're actually happening, just hit the subscribe on the YouTube channel and then hit the bell icon, and that'll make sure that you'll be notified when I'm about to go live so that you can get access to these and we can be in conversation when we get into some of these advanced disciplines as well. So take care, and I will talk to you then.